Recording now. I invite everyone who's attending to please enter your name, your congregational connection or organizational affiliation in the chat, please, so that we'll have a record of your attendance. Particularly important today if you are member of a DCIA congregation sticking around for our business meeting at the end of the Zoom. We do want to have that for our minutes in the record, and glad to have everyone here today, whether you're here as a DCIA affiliate or as a community member from among our wider associations and affiliations. You will see on your screen here our Durham Congregations in Action affirmation, and I'm happy to introduce Gordon Whitaker, our president of our board of directors, and to lead us in the affirmation and open our meeting. Gordon?
Thank you, Spencer. Good morning. Everyone else mute, but speak with me, please, in a spirit of reconciliation and with gratitude for the gift of diversity. DCIA seeks to engage, educate, and empower people of faith to create a community of justice and peace through our common prayers and acts of compassion, and with prophetic courage to act as advocates for the dignity and well-being of all persons, recognizing that behind every human face is the face of God. Thank you. And Spencer, now will you take our program over?
Yes, thank you, Gordon. Happy to. I'm happy to introduce Mary Oxendine, the Durham County Food Security Coordinator. Durham County began some significant public coordination work around food security during the pandemic at its beginning last year, and I was happy to have End Hunger Durham and DCIA be part of that collaboration over the last year, almost 2 years now. Out of that work, Durham County created a new staff position for coordinating food security work and development in Durham County, and recruited Mary Oxendine to fill that this year. We're happy to have her working in the community and building on and extending the work that launched so ambitiously during the pandemic's outbreak last year. And I'm going to let her take it from there to share about the work of her office and what she has been doing and what lies ahead for us in 2022 with regard to addressing hunger in Durham County. Mary, it's so good to have you on today, and I am going to designate you as a co-host so that you can share your screen. Let's see here.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me while Spencer's getting that. So, yeah, Spencer asked me to kind of come talk about the things that Durham County and our partners and community members have been doing kind of during COVID, and also kind of talk about sort of, where we're going in the future. So I have some slides. I can keep the slides pretty brief so that we have more time for a discussion, but I'm happy to talk as much or as little as you all would like. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay. And since I'm sharing, I may not be able to see everyone, so feel free to interrupt me or ask a question as we go along. I'm happy to kind of stop and start as we go. But again, my name is Mary Oxendine. I am Durham County's Food Security Coordinator. I just started in April, so I've been here not quite a year, but have a little bit of history as to what's been going on before I got here, but many of you were already doing this work before I came. So if you want to chime in on things, definitely feel free to. But before kind of diving into like what the community in Durham County has been doing in response to COVID, I wanted to just kind of start with defining food security a little bit. I know that you all work in this space, or a lot of you do all the time, but just kind of giving you a sense of what my concept of food security is and kind of like how I define it whenever I'm talking about it, so that, we just have a common language. So I will also then move on to what the community has been doing, sort of that action to support people during COVID for food security efforts. A general approach going forward, and then have time for discussion. The approach will kind of be more high level. We'll get into some things that we're thinking about, but not quite ready to designate a plan or lay out a plan just yet. We're still working on getting there. So anyway, so defining food security. Generally, whenever I talk to people, this is just kind of the general short and sweet definition that I give people, is being able to always buy or safely get nutritious food. And I kind of generally, whenever I talk to people, I emphasize the, just buying or safely getting. You don't always have to buy food. You can grow food. You can get food in other ways, but also just making sure that it's nutritious food. Thinking about food security and sort of like the broader definition, it's kind of broken down into three parts. Whenever you take it sort of like more holistically, is thinking about availability, access, and utilization. So in the United States, we have no short supply of food. There's an abundance here. But whenever we think about availability in the future, I am working with my colleagues in agriculture to make sure that we can create a local food system, so that we have farmers locally that are using regenerative farming practices, so that we can be more resilient to climate change and have our own local food supply, rather than having to deal with supply chain issues like we are right now. Most of the time, whenever we talk about food security or food insecurity in the US, we're talking about access. So that goes to, do people have financial resources to buy the food? Are they in a place where they can physically get to the store? Location plays a big role whenever you don't have a vehicle and you need to walk to a store or take a bus. And then lastly is the utilization part, and being able to, again, that nutrition side of it, being able to get all the nutrients that you need from the food, and being able to prepare that food in a safe way. So that's generally how I'm thinking about it. And then, so thinking about how food security connects to other things. So like, this is kind of sort of, why is food security so important? So it's not just, it is important to make sure that people have access to food, but then that also connects to long-term impacts on health outcomes and people's mental health. So if someone is food insecure, a lot of times they will, because they don't have a lot of money to spend on food, they might start eating cheaper foods, which are usually less quality, more highly processed. They might skip meals or eat less to try to accommodate not having a lot of food. So that all increases stress. It reduces, the nutritious quality of the food that they're having, which can result in chronic disease. And that increases healthcare expenditures. Maybe they're not able to physically work as much as they used to. And so now, because they're spending more on healthcare expenses, their household income is less. So they now are even more food insecure. So it's really just kind of a cycle that people can get into that not only affects their ability to, actually eat food, but all other aspects of life. Just one more infographic, just the two circled in red, just highlighting that it also affects children's long-term sort of their educational outcomes, their cognitive functioning. If you're in school and you're hungry, it's really hard to focus and pay attention. Children may start acting out a lot more. So just, food insecurity can have kind of like ripple effects on people and society. So moving to how is our community kind of work together to address food security during COVID. I wanted to start with this graphic. So this shows you how many people have been served by food pantries over time, looking back from 2016. And you can see that there was a really big jump in people being served by food pantries in 2020 and 2021. And just a caveat, this data for 2021 was until August. So we're a little bit behind, but it's a sort of a rough estimate. But generally, compared to before the pandemic, compared to 2019, the number of people being served at food pantries increased 152% this year. So that gives you some sense of like how many people are food insecure, or at least like the increase of need in our community, but also the level of work that you all are doing, that our food pantries are doing. Our food pantries have significantly increased the amount of work that they've been doing and have continued at that higher level for a pretty long time, almost 2 years now. So, I'll go over some more things, but I just wanted to just kind of emphasize that I really appreciate all the work that our emergency food providing organizations do in the community, because I have no idea like how these organizations and you all do this work largely on a volunteer basis. So thank you. Thank you so much for what you do. So the county did have some investments that they made in regards to contracts for emergency food assistance in Durham. There's some organizations on this slide, and there's a few more on the next slide that I'll show. Total, the emergency food assistance contracts have been to date about $2.5 million. So there's been a big investment, but I will say that additional help is needed. But so far we have had BU Cafe and the BU Food Project providing home delivered meals to COVID vulnerable populations. El Centro Hispano provided food to 300 Latino households. In Hunger Durham provided meals to 900 low-income seniors. Farmer Food Share was able to provide 350 produce boxes a week for food pantries, and that program did last a short while. That was only 2 months, but total it was 3,500 food boxes. The Food Insight Group worked with Durham County for quite some time to provide meals to seniors and families and schools, school meals for children. And then lastly, Meals on Wheels provided 100 meals to high-risk, low-income Durham seniors. And then so the next county program or kind of investment that organizations received were through nonprofit grant funding. This was a much smaller effort at around $264,000, but this program is continuing, or most of the programs are continuing to date. And just from the initial reports that I kind of looked through, have provided over 83,000 meals, and that's just the initial reports that folks have provided. That doesn't, I think that was just for like the first half of the grant. So again, it's Believers United for Progress. They are delivering, I didn't include numbers for these since they're not done, but they've been providing hot meals, food boxes, and home delivered meals. Communities in Partnership has provided food for their co-op members, really focusing on sourcing food from BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, and people of color farmers. DCIA helped they administered food security micro grants to, I think, 15 nonprofits. And In Hunger Durham, again, has been providing food to seniors, and Iglesia Emmanuel has been providing food to their food pantry participants, which has been, I think, today more than 600 families a week. So these are just kind of, sort of high level things that the county and community members have been involved in. It definitely does not include all the work that has been done. There's, a whole group of folks that have been meeting as far as with the Food Security Task Force, and lots of other organizations in the community providing support along the way. But I just wanted to provide some kind of like high level things that people have been doing in the community. So thinking about an approach going forward, my approach to this is two-pronged. I think that while we are providing immediate food assistance, people who need food now, they can't wait. We also need to work towards systems change. So one Racial Equity Institute training that I went to, the lady gave an analogy about you're by this river and babies, you see a baby floating in the river. So you like jump in to save the baby and you get it out. And then by the time you get that baby out, then you see another baby floating down the river. And so you jump in and get that baby out. And so providing the immediate food assistance is kind of like the jumping in and getting the baby out. But where are these babies coming from? And why are they in the water? And so that systems change part is kind of going back to what are the root causes of why people are food insecure? People don't have a living wage. They don't have affordable housing, affordable childcare. So thinking about how do we work towards addressing babies being put in the river in the first place so that we don't have to keep saving people. I strongly believe that, people would love to be able to take care of themselves and not need assistance. So how do we help support them to be in a better position? So thinking about immediate food needs, we pretty much, I know that there is still lots of need in the community, and I have made several requests to our county leadership and the commissioners to see if we can continue to support organizations that are doing this work. I am still in talks and waiting. I have not received any approval to kind of move forward with a lot of things. But I just wanted to let you all know that, some of the things that we've kind of requested. So we are requesting grants for emergency food providers, and not just mini grants. So this particular request is actually for much larger grants, more like $30,000 per organization potentially. And so it's a much bigger ask. We know that there's, COVID, I don't even know what that means to go away, but it's not going away. And the negative economic impacts of COVID will definitely stay around for a while. Anytime that we've had a recession in the past, it's taken many years for people to kind of dig themselves out of the hole that they're in. And that's no different with COVID. People are thousands of dollars behind on rent, electricity, other utilities. So it's going to be a while and they're still going to need help. And so another program that we're proposing to kind of help with that is a fresh produce box initiative. Farmer Food Share did run a produce box initiative for the county for 2 months, but we're hoping and asking to restart that and actually restart at a much higher level. So I mentioned before that Farmer Food Share provided 350 boxes a week. The request right now is more for 800 boxes a week. And so that doesn't meet what we've been asked for. We've been asked for 1,200 boxes a week. So to request funding for 800 still wouldn't necessarily reach everyone, but it would be, a significant contribution to helping the community. And the other thing that we have requested is to expand the Double Bucks program. So that program basically matches what people can purchase through SNAP, WIC, and other benefits at farmers markets. And we would love to, right now that program is very limited. Actually, they're concerned, they haven't been advertising it at all because they're worried about running out of money because the amount of people on SNAP has increased and the demand for Double Bucks has increased. And so we would really like to add more funding so that we can actually advertise it and let people know that that program is there, but also expand it beyond farmers markets so that people can use those benefits at grocery stores so that they're not like just limited to farmers markets hours or those days that the markets are open. And someone did note or ask me a question in the chat if I'll share this presentation, and I did share a copy with Spencer, and I'm happy to have him email it out to everyone that joined. So that's kind of thinking about emergency food needs. So thinking about systems change, generally my sort of high level aims are to help people become self-sufficient, as I mentioned earlier. And my like primary focus sounds like has nothing to do with food security. But it is, again, like it's all related, because if people had the financial means to buy food or get food for themselves, they would not need emergency assistance. And in an ideal world, emergency assistance would be just that, for emergencies. It would not be ongoing use. It would, if a tornado or a hurricane or something, that would be an emergency, not a place that people need to go to every week. But generally, the kind of aims of the system change would be to create generational wealth, supporting living wage jobs, basically shifting power from government, from those who've been in power in the past, to people that are most impacted by food insecurity. So one thing that I've definitely let people know is that although I'm the food security coordinator, I am not interested in driving the conversation. I want the community to drive. And so I'll be, that's something that I've been working towards and will continue. And then just explicitly saying that I would love to upend systemically racist policies. That has been a huge reason why people have found themselves in the situation that they are, particularly BIPOC communities. But, redlining and other discriminatory policies from USDA and other government entities, and lots of other ways of, that this has shown up in society, kind of created poor circumstances for people. So how am I proposing to go about system change? I just want to show you all this graphic. I won't go into too much detail, but essentially, this is an amazing article. If you've not read The Water of Systems Change, it's just really thoughtful about how do you go about kind of upending the water that we swim in society. Like we thinking about ourselves as fish, it's sometimes hard for us to pull back and even see the water that we're in. And so we do have these mental models or these worldviews or conceptions about how we see things that are hard for us to see and be aware of. So part of working towards system change is, essentially changing hearts and minds and how we view each other, ourselves, or what's possible in the world. A huge part of what I've been working on is developing relationships and connections and helping connect people to each other. and again, shifting power dynamics, so that perhaps the county is not in a seat of power, but a seat of partnership. And we are in this side by side and not in a hierarchical system. And then at the top would be the policies, practices, and resource flows. So I won't spend too much time on that, but that I will say that this is kind of something that guides my work and guides the way that I'm thinking about this. And so I'm spinning, I guess the triangle is almost like an iceberg, where it's like you can see the policies, practices, and resource flows above the water, but everything else is kind of underneath. So a lot of times it may not look like things are happening, but there's a lot of pre-work to be done on that sort of like lower part of the iceberg in order to change the things on top. If we decided to change policies or practices, but didn't change the power dynamics or these mental models, then those policies probably wouldn't stick, or people wouldn't follow them. It wouldn't be implemented in the spirit of what we would really want. So it's kind of that working from the bottom up is really important. So that was kind of my spiel. I wanted to have some time to talk to you all. I do, just so that you know, in the slides that I sent Spencer, I do have some things. If you want to get involved, we are promoting Food for Durham in the.
I am running a webinar with my camera's off. It's just ending.
And I do have my contact information on the last slide, and then some places where folks can get access to food resources if you're interested or need them. So I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you all.
Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate that. And I would invite anyone on, if you have a question you'd like to raise, to unmute yourself and raise that question, or if you're more comfortable with putting it in the chat, we're very receptive to that as well. Good to see some of the longtime food warriors over the campaign of the last couple of years showing up here. I should I think it might help to clarify for some of the folks who have not been active in the Food Security Council, Mary, that the Food for Durham fund on that last slide is a fund that is being hosted by the United Way of the Greater Triangle for collecting funds for food security work in the Durham community. So to be a general kind of food security fund administered by a committee of community representatives by the United Way. And if you're interested in learning more about that, for instance, participating on the steering committee for that Food for Durham Fund, or making contributions to it, please reach out to Mary, and she can help you out with that. Let's see here. Any other? Let's see here. I see we got a couple of hands up. Someone want to start with that?
Okay. One of those hands is mine.
Thanks, Miguel.
A couple of comments more than questions, because I have been in contact with Mary. I think every time I call, I think she runs away because I'm bugging her every single day because of the great need that's in our community. So if we look at the system change triangle, or the iceberg that you said, Mary, on the top we say policies, practices, and resource flows. Well, policies normally takes longer time to do. Same thing, to create new practices is a time sensitive, but resource flows, for the life of me, the county has $60 million and the city has $50 million already in the bank that they were given to them to do relief, stress due to COVID. Because of COVID, we saw the slides that Mary showed us. hunger in Durham has grown more than 200%. So hunger or food insecurity, whatever you want to call it, is not something in our community. What happens is something that nobody talked about it before COVID. But now everybody's talking, but nobody in the government level is doing any darn thing. Mary came with the proposal to start providing, good quality fresh produce to our community in September. We are in December, 3 months later, and they are still talking about it. I think it's up to all of us. Go to the county commissioners, go to the city council, say, for heaven's sake, do your job. Start taking care of the community. You have the resources, okay? You don't need to pass new policies. You just use the resources that you have. And the second thing, similar to this, is that food insecurity is not a problem that was due to COVID-19. As I said before, food insecurity was here before. It has been accentuated now with COVID, but this now, more than COVID, is economy. Salaries have not gone up, but price of food has skyrocketed. People get to the middle of the month and they paycheck, and this is hardworking people. This is not unemployed. But at the middle of the month, the check is gone, and they have to eat and they have to pay rent. So, we food pantries in Durham, as much as we want to, don't have the resources. In our food pantry, we feed almost 3,000 people every week. Well, we are a very poor Hispanic church. We don't have the financial resources to continue doing that. God has been providing. It's no doubt about it. And we know that God will continue providing. But we need a hand, okay? We need a hand from the authorities in our community to move and act quickly and start helping us to relieve hunger in our community. And that's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Miguel is amazing, as you all can see. He is very passionate about this work, and I will say that I do. As far as the resource flow, it's that one is not focused on emergency food assistance or saying that we need to work on that last. It's more focused on the kind of related to the power dynamics of making sure that the people have sort of the power over how the resources flow, rather than organizations or governments, or we're trying to sort of shift power of the resource flow from those on high, or whatever sort of some hierarchical entity, to those in the community. I will say that as far as the need in the community, Miguel is absolutely right. I would say that, yeah, if you all feel, if you have thoughts or ideas on how to support the community, definitely feel free to reach out to the commissioners or any other leadership in the county. They are always interested in hearing from community members, probably more so than me. And I will say that that's how my position got created. So Betsy is on here, as she and lots of others from In Hunger Durham and other folks in the community basically advocated with the commissioners and others in the county for my position. And so I would, essentially what Miguel was saying, encourage you definitely to reach out to let the county commissioners and staff know that this is something that is important in the community and still needed. And sometimes they are much more willing to act, based on community members' feedback, because staff, it wasn't based on a staff recommendation for my position. It was community members.
Thanks, Mary. Good information. Certainly, I think responding to a question Mary and Abernathy raised in connection with that, it is good for city council members and county commissioners, and for that matter, our the lead staff in our municipal governments, the city manager and the county manager, to hear about that additional food resources for people who are food insecure, that affordable housing resources for people on the margins are key issues for our priorities for us, really. So thanks for highlighting that. And Miguel, next time don't be so shy when you share with us. Tell us what you really think. Let's hear.
Good morning, Spencer. I won.
Dana, thanks for your patience. You're on.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I have a question, but just in response to the content of what was just said. I've asked in different settings like this, like not on the government side, but just on the nonprofit side. Is there a place where we can communicate about resources we have so we can share resources? Not, like I said, this is not on the government grant side, but just, is there a place to, I know I got an email recently about a program that's starting with helping with driving to like connect, smaller organizations to be able to share resources. But is there an ongoing place for us to be able to have those kinds of conversations?
That's a good question, Dana. I think, knowing Durhamites the way that we all do here, I think I think everyone who's involved in community service work would recognize that it's always going to be a number of networks and pools. There's as hard as many of us who are here today have worked to try to include and incorporate as much of that communication as possible. Certainly DCIA over the years, but others as well, to facilitate that, including the Food Security Council of the county being a network for that. In Hunger Durham, pulling together specifically crisis food providers to try to improve the sharing of information around networks, but in the wider community as well. I'd say there's multiple places and venues that happens in, and I think the more overlap and interaction that we have among those, the better. For instance, I know that DCIA's news emails and postings have often profited by interaction with the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, with our mutual sharing of that kind of information to try to get it disseminated in different communication circles as much as we can, with different circles of congregations in that specific instance. And the same thing is aimed at by In Hunger Durham and Mary's Food Security Council and others. So I think it's going to continue to be important work to do to try to get the word out in multiple networks. Durham Cares often is helpful to get out some of that information to congregations that are not engaged with IMA or DCIA. If anyone, I would invite anyone who has some direct involvement connection with, say, one of those networks of communication that you'd like to see more active or connected about the kind of information that Dana was describing, to speak up, let us know.
And just to add to what Spencer was saying, I was just going to say the Food Security Task Force, we do have a food security listserv that I'm happy to add you to, Dana. I know that some people share some information on that. But as Spencer was saying, I don't think there's like one central place. There is a food pantry operator meeting that happens once a month, that to try to organize across the food pantries and share information across them. But I don't think there's like one central location. And many times it is better to kind of post on multiple channels, depending on what kind of information you're trying to share, Dana.
Okay. No, I mean, oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, Dana, it's okay. Go ahead and finish, and then I will share.
No, I mean, I was just thinking about the time, I've talked, there's been some other organizations, the same thing. It just seems like sometimes one organization has what another one needs and vice versa. But that happens sometimes week to week. Like, we got 1,200 pounds of chicken one week and we were able to help somebody else that week, but the next week we didn't have it. So it's not so much the kind of thing, it's just like, it's not the thing, a meeting once a month type of situation. I just didn't know if there's like you're speaking about, a place where people are posting, this is what I have this week kind of situation.
We've talked about, we're still trying to figure that out, actually. It is an issue that's come up definitely on the food pantry operator calls, like, because exactly what you're saying, some pantries have more than enough and other ones don't have enough. Right now, it's just sort of, we do have a food pantry operator list, and you're more than welcome to email or text or call people on the list. But we don't, I think they tried, WhatsApp or other sort of texting apps in the past, and people weren't really using them.
Mhm.
We've thought about having an email listserv for that, but then that's not as quick of a response. So I would love to get your thoughts on like what might be useful for y'all. But yeah, that's definitely something that's come up as far as like.
Mary,
Go ahead, Katushka. You had something you wanted to ask.
okay, but Spencer, this is just 1 second related to the same thing about the food operators, the food. I'm getting. We had a meeting last week, and we decided that Hunger Durham is going to provide the list of the food pantries in town with the person responsible for that food pantry with the phone number. So when we have things like Dana said, I have 300 pounds of sweet potatoes that I cannot use, then I put that, and then they will react and say, I need it. I think so. That's a good beginning. So the food pantry operators meetings once a month, as Mary said, is a good beginning. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Katushka.
Okay. It's nice to hear what Miguel said, and Mary, thank you for your responses. And Dan, I think you touched a good point. I feel that we working and we going kind of a slow motion, but we may be one day in a good, more coordinated way. But those stomachs, those bellies, they can't wait. So we need to do a little bit more action. I mean, it's important to have all those resources, but friends, those resources only go to the people that they have the organizations. They don't go into the community. And plus, they create all these resource lists, which is 2 or 3 pages. And we need to see the literacy level of our people and also the transportation issue that they have. So I think we need to move a little bit more. And I like what Mary said. I want to hear the community. Okay, Mary, I invite you. Let's do not only a house meeting, but you need to visit all those neighborhoods that it's amazing how much poverty they have there and the lack of food. I mean, it's amazing. So one time is calling, but then nothing is happening. I think it needs to be a consistent program that they can help and distribute it and connect it to other places. There is a lot of after-school programs in town now that they're serving low-income families. That is one way, but still there are neighborhoods that they are not being outreach themselves, that they need. I mean, it's not easy. It's easy for us that we have all these wonderful resources, transportation, and good connection.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was me. Hang on. There we go. Thanks. Sorry about that, Katushka.
Okay, so I think it's really important for us to do a better service now. I mean, I hear one time that they were giving, as Dana say, I think there were some oranges, some fruit, but how people know it? I knew it when it was already passed. So how I'm going to tell my families, go ahead and pick it up? No, I think it needs to be a better way of communication, but also it needs to be a calendar possible, if it's possible, at least one week in a different neighborhood. We need to go to them. It's not enough just to have all these organizations. I'm grateful for all these organizations. They're doing a wonderful job, but it's not enough. There again, we need to consider not they don't have enough resources themselves, and we as a church, we deliver bags. Our parishioners, they donate every week. We don't have a big pantry because we don't have a space either, but whatever they donate, they call me and they need, I prepare the bags and I deliver it immediately the same day on Sunday. But it's kind of like a chain thing that we all should be kind of work it out, but not only between organizations. We here are the leaders, but how about the people? And I think that's what they needed. We need more go directly service. Thank you.
Thanks, Katushka. I am going to need to close this part of our program because we have a little DCIA business that we need to take care of today. I want to thank Mary again for coming on and invite her to put her email address in the chat. I know she showed it earlier, but so that y'all can follow up with her individually. And I also want to invite her to put into the chat the Zoom link to the food security task force meetings on the third Wednesday of the month, so that more can involve with that. We just had a conversation with some of our crop walk organizers last night about connecting more of our crop walk teams with that task force, so that again we can engage more of our grassroots workers on hunger relief with each other and with the work that the task force is doing.